Nostalgia is a powerful force to feel, regardless of whatever it may be about. Be it nostalgia about a place that you used to go to with buddies after school, books that you used to read, the general technology of back then, or, in correlation with the review that I'll be doing today, video games. I have had multiple nostalgia rushes that have made me purposefully hit the power button on something like my Xbox 360 or PlayStation 2 rather than any of the current gen consoles. Something about going back in time to relive the glory days is captivating for not just me, but for the other people who experience that same feeling too. Whether it be just the fact that we were younger and more naive of the world's problems at the time, being able to hop online with friends and have a blast together, or it could just be the mere fact that the game was really great and it really stuck with us as a memory that we remember fondly. Well, for this game, I got the best possible outcome when it comes to wanting and needing to play it. Not only did I legitimately want to play this game as part of my nostalgia rush, but I also needed to as a direct follow-up to my Battlefield Bad Company review. So, gather your gear and let's dive right back into memory lane with Battlefield Bad Company 2. Battlefield Bad Company 2 is a direct follow-up to the first game in the series and is in many ways a vast improvement from the original, most notably in the game's core gameplay / overall combat. Featuring more game modes for multiplayer, increased player counts and battlefield sizes, an increase in destruction, and more. However, the single player for most people was a little more on the average side. Not an absolute snooze fest like later entries in their campaigns, but still enough to make most people say that the first Bad Company had the better campaign in comparison. To start things off, let's talk about that single player to see why most people weren't overly amazed by it like with the first one. Bad Company 2 single player starts off with you in the shoes of Thomas Wyatt, a US commando during World War II sent in along with his unit and another commando unit to extract a Japanese scientist that has defected to the Allies. You make things go boom 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 until you're able to escape the island with the defector in tow, until... From here on out, the game has you once more taking on the role of Private Preston Marlowe in the Bad Company unit, along with the returning soldiers from the first game, Sarge aka Redford, Sweetwater, and Haggard. The game takes place in an unspecified amount of time after the first game, where suddenly the Russians are on the offensive. Like, really on the offensive. As in, they have taken over multiple countries and continents at this point. It makes the whole stop the world from entering World War III point kind of mute since, well, I think World War III is already happening at this point? But anyway, the story revolves around Marlowe and the rest of Bad Company coming across some sort of mysterious weapon during a mission and embarking on a quest to figure out what it is and how to stop it. Wink wink nudge nudge. Right off the bat, you'll notice that this game's story is a lot more serious in tone. We went from stealing gold from mercenaries to ditch the war to stopping a super weapon from choke-slamming the US into the pavement. As I stated in my Bad Company review, I do like serious plots and tones, but it's also nice to be able to kick back and relax to have some good laughs for a game too. Now, the fact the plot takes on a much more serious tone isn't the issue here. If the game retained its Bad Company charm and carried a lot of comedy throughout the journey, the motivating factors behind the team's actions can be as serious as the plot calls for them to be. However, this leads into the biggest area where Bad Company 2 fumbles in: the characters. Sarge, Sweetwater, Haggard, and Marlowe all went through drastic personality changes from Bad Company 1 to 2, to the point where it almost feels like the serious plot influenced how the characters behave in this game. Sarge retains his squad leader, no fooling around attitude, but he hardly ever displays his leadership authority in a comedic way here. In Bad Company 1, he needed to put his foot down multiple times, which gave us some good chuckles. Here, he never really does that, at least not in ways that can get a laugh or two out.
Let's get ready. This is the plan. We hit the weapons depot first. Once we have that area secured, we regroup and we move on to the fuel dump.
Excuse me, Sarge, wouldn't it be easier to do it the other way around?
Or we could split up into teams and take them both at the same time.
Oh, yeah, that's interesting. Or I could shoot the two of you and do this thing along with Marlowe.
Okay, we'll do it your way. You're the boss.
I had him! We let that piece of shit go?
You ain't got shit on no one unless I say you do. Simmer the fuck down. Your time will come. Archangel, subject is gone. Vehicle is still present.
Bravo 2 Actual, the town has been declared hostile. Secure the vehicle.
That's a solid copy, Archangel. Out. You heard the man.
Sweetwater doesn't babble on about various facts and information, and has a personality that I can best describe as the nerd hiding his true intelligent self to try and fit in with the cool soldiers.
Hey, Sweets, you keeping an eye out for those trucks?
You know that greed's one of the 7 deadly sins, right?
So it's killing people.
No, actually, you're thinking about the 10 commandments. Now, the 7 deadly sins are greed, avarice, lust.
Sweetwater, just shut up.
Absolutely, Sarge.
Marlowe, rifle, there. Units moving in. A minute, maybe less. I guess it's just you and me. Let's go to work.
Haggard went from being a loud, boastful, explosion-loving guy to someone who still loves explosives, but he only shows his boastful and loud side a handful of times here, instead opting for also a much more serious tone the majority of the time.
Well done. Let's regroup after smoke.
Feels good, doesn't it? I remember blowing up my first tank.
Sweet Jesus. That is the greatest thing I have ever seen in my entire life.
And Marlowe? He went from being a cardboard box to a cardboard box that can swear now.
We let that piece of shit go? Damn it! Bingo.
Hey, you kiss your rug with that mouth? I'm proud of you, friend.
The best way that I can describe this change in the tone of the story and characters is that someone looked at the first Bad Company and decided to make a fanfiction where they think it's all cool and edgy, that the characters and plot are both more serious in nature, but also try to remain respectful to the first game by including some of the characters' original personality, keyword some. And because of the fact that the characters have taken on this much more serious tone, coupled with the more serious plot, makes this story kinda generic. Like, it's not bad. I wasn't actively cringing at the dialogue or plot, but a large majority of the game misses its original charm the first game had. To the game's credit, the one character that I felt had that Bad Company charm on a consistent basis was the helicopter pilot that flies you to and from missions, Flynn.
Hey, Flynn, right? What's our ETA? Flynn? Mr. Pilot, sir? Come on, dude!
Shoot, man, just hang on, man. I lost my smoke, so hang on a minute.
Fuck Tuesdays, man. Let me get my shit together on a Tuesday. When are we gonna get there?
Couple of minutes.
Whoa, how about that? Oh, RPG! RPG!
Yeah, I saw it.
Whoa, what the fuck?
Now, you see these cheap Russian RPGs? They're easy, man. If it's like a javelin, I have to do something really tricky.
Can you just get us to the fucking LZ before I have to do something real tricky too?
Right. You got it, boss.
However, the only times the Bad Company charm shows itself in true force is when you stand idle for a few minutes to let the 3 others in your squad get into conversations. But, credit where it's due, these conversations can be pretty damn funny.
I wonder if we're really gonna be a part of SAB now. I mean, me, Marlowe, Sarge, I get, but you, Haggard? They really gotta be scraping the bottom of the barrel to admit a whiskey tango dirt eater such as yourself into our esteemed company.
That dog won't hunt, Terrence. I think it's time for you to shut the fuck up.
I will if you will.
You know what sucks? Here we are.
in the middle of South America stand, or whatever it's called. All special operationed up, and we're still blowing up barrels.
So what would you rather be doing?
Just saying, rescuing hostages, doing like slow-mo weapons kills on terrorists, telling people to get off my plane.
You want to be Harrison Ford in Air Force One?
Don't you?
No, you got to be Indiana Jones, man. You know.
I like Harrison Ford better.
That was Harrison Ford.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You still got bad vibes about Aguirre, Hags?
Aguirre, I never trusted him. I don't like his voice.
I feel you on that, Hags. I feel you on that. Not to be trusted.
But come on, guys. He's CIA. He's the American government. Of course he's trustworthy. Oh, God, I just heard what I was saying.
Exactly. He's
Exactly.
a spook. He's a spook.
Bravo 2, this is Ghost Rider. I need a 7-letter word, starts with S.
You're really hard to work up there, huh?
Seriously, a Russian instrument for heating water.
Easy, sampan.
Sampan is 6 letters, genius, not to mention a boat. Try samovar.
Samovar. Oh man, samovar, that's it. Thanks, buddy.
No problem.
Even then, however, you have to idly wait for these conversations to occur. These are not part of the natural gameplay. Sure, the original had conversations that would happen if you stood idle for a few minutes, and they were just as funny, but there was also a huge chunk of the comedy while you progressed through the game. Most players aren't going to stand around doing nothing just for the heck of it, so it makes sense why such a huge part of the original's comedy was woven throughout the game. Here, it feels like you have to sit idly by to experience that Bad Company charm again. Now, while the plot itself may sound more interesting, getting gold versus stopping a super weapon, ironically, the plot of getting the gold from the first game ends up being the more fun one to experience. You want to know why? The characters. It doesn't matter if you have the best story and plot twist in the entire world. If the characters in your story are unlikable or too different from whatever previous forms of media that they showed up in, be it a video game, TV show, book, movie, whatever, the people consuming that media are not going to enjoy it, or at least not enjoy it as much. Hell, in particularly bad cases, some people may not even bother to make it to the end of the story. I don't mean to paint the wrong picture here. Bad Company 2 is a campaign that you can sit through and still get some enjoyment out of. It's just perplexing to see the characters transition from their comedic selves to their more serious selves. It's like the squad went through some traumatic, terrible event that was never mentioned in the lore of the game or series. It also doesn't help that in Bad Company 2, Bad Company feels like a proper Spec Ops unit, when in the first game it's established that B Company is more of a penal unit that's used as cannon fodder. That's probably because in Bad Company 2, Bad Company does become part of a Spec Ops unit in the story.
Oh, welcome to Special Activities Division.
I guess you could say the pitiful name of this Spec Ops group is a little sad. Plots where a penal unit or unit that's initially seen as just cannon fodder becoming an army's most valuable asset due to them not following the conventional rules of warfare have been done before. But if that's the case here, we don't get any sort of build-up to Bad Company being seen as a recognized bona fide force. The squad becomes a part of SAD right after the second mission. Speaking of build-ups, the game decides to reveal its massive super weapon right from the start, when I feel like this could have been done better. Later in the game, the team discovers a piece of intel, a book, that contains information about the super weapon that they're hunting. What if, instead of the World War II US Commando mission being at the start of the game, we transitioned from this cutscene of Marlowe figuring out the info about the super weapon to...
Marlowe, you're awful quiet over there.
Well, this whole Operation Aurora thing, I think I just found part of it.
Hey, you missed a spot, White.
There it is. Now we wait.
And then the big reveal happens. That would be way more effective, in my opinion, from a storytelling perspective, because we would be in everyone's modern day shoes of not knowing what this super weapon is about until much later in the story, when the reveal would be much more impactful. Overall, Bad Company 2's story is alright. Don't get me wrong, I'd much rather prefer an alright story to a terrible one, but it didn't blow me away or leave me super satisfied. It just kinda left me thinking, well, that was that. Okay, so Bad Company 2 fumbled on its story and characters. What about the gameplay? The gameplay is thankfully much more smooth compared to the first. While I did still experience that 2009-2010 era feel where the movements and actions are still a little stiff, it's nowhere near as stiff and clunky as it was in the first Bad Company. Along with the general feel of the game being improved upon, core gameplay elements have experienced improvement as well. For instance, rather than Bad Company 1's odd system of your loadout consisting of a primary weapon and a piece of equipment, you now have a primary weapon along with a dedicated secondary weapon. Things such as grenade launchers, C4, repair tools, medkits, etc. are more naturally mapped out on the D-pad rather than with the bumper buttons on a controller. The time to kill in this game has been drastically reduced too, meaning weapons now have normal ammo counts along with the general gunplay feeling a lot better as a result. Rather than relying on an auto-injector to replenish health, the game opts for the health regeneration approach, which I think works nicely for this game. The enemies themselves offer a decent enough challenge, but fuck the RPG enemies. Seriously, they often use their rockets in situations that would get themselves killed in the blast as well, treating their weapon like an anti-personnel weapon rather than an anti-vehicle or anti-material weapon. Like, I can understand the enemies using their rockets at long ranges to blow away my piece of cover, especially with the Frostbite engine that allows for that stuff to happen. That's a legitimate tactic, but when the enemies continue to use their rockets up at close range that would get themselves killed in the blast as well? Like, what the f? However, there are also things about the gameplay that, while not game-breaking, do leave me feeling a little conflicted. The big one regarding the gameplay is how linear the campaign is. With the original Bad Company, while it wasn't the most vast and rich open world out there, it did give the player a few more options when it came to combat. Occasionally, it would be up to the player on what objective they should tackle first. Did the player prefer to take the RPG for direct vehicle combat, or did they want to take the laser designator? Did they want to blow open the side of the house or breach and clear it so that the integrity of the house remained intact? While you can do some of that here, it doesn't take away the linear feeling of the game. Hell, look at the map as the gameplay progresses, it's literally showing a linear path. There are also a few scripted segments of the game, such as calling in an airstrike on a tank, flanking a turret, and a car chase to give some examples. No longer are you able to hop in a tank and decimate the initial enemy forces before hopping out to deal with the stragglers. No longer are you able to perform a massive flank on enemies. No longer are you able to explore a little and pick up a piece of equipment that can be beneficial later in that level. Here, it's just one path with very little in the way of exploration. You go where the game tells you to go. Along the way, you're able to choose what your primary and secondary weapons are through scattered weapon crates during a level. As you acquire new weapons during a fresh playthrough, they're added to a list of weapons for you to choose from later. The weapon selection here is thankfully pretty good, I'm happy to report. It's nice to be able to choose from a proper loadout along with said loadout consisting of many more weapons to choose from, but I gotta be honest, the system is pretty bare bones / vanilla here. Most players will stick with one single loadout that works for them in all situations and will hardly ever need to switch aside from a select scenario or two. Now, this linearity of Bad Company 2 wouldn't bug me as much as it does if it didn't feel like it was mimicking something. Think about it. Linear gameplay, shooting galleries, the characters and plot both adopting much more serious tones. I can't help but to feel like this was Battlefield trying to be a little bit like Call of Duty. For a point of reference, in 2007, a couple years before Bad Company 2 was released, Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare came out and transformed the Call of Duty franchise. 2 years later, in 2009, Modern Warfare 2 came out and transformed the series even further, transitioning it from a series about war and grit to full-blown blockbuster movie status. After seeing just how successful both COD 4 and MW2 were, I can't help but to feel like the developers looked at that game and went, if that is the case, then in the pursuit of becoming just like COD 4 and MW2 and their explosive, action-packed campaigns, more so on MW2's side for that particular point, but you get what I mean, it sacrificed what made the series famous in the first place. It's tempting to be just like the cool games, but the series should have truly stuck with what it specializes in instead of trying to become something else. Or, at minimum, become something else better, if you are. Overall, Bad Company 2's campaign is average. It's not a bad campaign by any stretch of the imagination, but it doesn't particularly excel in any one given area either. It's just kinda there. Something most people will play through once and probably forget about in favor of one of the best multiplayer experiences Battlefield has ever produced. This is what most, if not all of you, are waiting for me to get to, and we're finally here. Bad Company 2's multiplayer is some of the most fondly remembered and still well-played multiplayer shooters to this day. I myself have fond memories playing this game back in the day with friends from school, and it was pretty darn cool to be able to relive this multiplayer experience while making this review. However, while the actual multiplayer is loads of fun, actually getting there, as in actively finding games to play, was a little bit of a doozy. Don't get me wrong, I knew that trying to find public lobbies of a game that's roughly 11 years old as of this video would mean that my experience would be slightly limited. But I didn't expect this much trouble trying to play the darn multiplayer. I couldn't find any populated Conquest or Rush games to save my life. I ended up just messing around on an empty server with this other player, but I still left ultimately disappointed. I was able to play! But I died a lot while getting used to this game's physics and controls again.
Shit, we need a medic! Get out!
I guess it's back to the normal multiplayer. Oh, you gotta be kidding me. This was when I finally got into the zone.
Man 2, we lost control of the fireman. Our position's been compromised.
Although, as I said earlier, adjusting to the game's multiplayer did take a little bit of time, once I did, I remembered why I looked back at this game so fondly. I remembered why this is still to this day regarded as a fantastic first-person shooter. Bad Company 2's multiplayer is a massive, I mean massive, improvement over the original's multiplayer in so many ways it's hard to even count. The movement, while still feeling a little stiff nowadays, is nowhere near as stiff and clunky here. Just like in the campaign, the gunplay for the multiplayer here flows much better and feels great. the faster time to kill and more accurate weaponry being the two big reasons. The guns themselves are more varied with more options for the weapon selection itself along with perks for your class. The classes in the game each have a distinct role and work great with one another. Teamwork and coordination is needed with the other players playing as the other classes in order to win the day once more. Instead of just one mode, there's 4, though 2 of those 4 are the only seriously populated ones that I could find during my time playing. Expanded vehicle combat means that the battles themselves are more intense and engaging than in the first. Squad play is more encouraged with being able to choose from a selection of squad mates to spawn on, along with general benefits such as more points when aiding squad mates, along with just generally playing better when you play as a squad. If you can't tell already, the multiplayer of this game is amazing and I had an absolute blast revisiting it. But alright, I'll slow down, I'll slow myself down. Let's look at the multiplayer with a keen eye. Because while Bad Company 2's multiplayer is loads of fun, it's not 100% perfect. But let's start by going over the pros in greater detail. Compared to the first Bad Company, the movement system here is much more fluid. Although not as fluid as FPS games that are published today, as in you'll still see and feel that stiff nature, it's nowhere near as rough as the first Bad Company. Did this movement system still cause the occasional cluster of a mess? Yeah, but those moments are few and far between from my personal experience. The gunplay in Bad Company 1 was good, it's just how the game handled its time to kill along with the 2008 connection quality made it a bit of a shock to go back to. Here in Bad Company 2, while not flawless, it is much better. Gunfights feel a lot more smooth to do, to the point where I could find myself getting into a rhythm of sorts. There are more weapons to choose from, along with options regarding attachments or upgrades for them. You can have things such as increased ammo, a red dot or ACOG scope, increased accuracy, etc. Along with the fact that there's an increase in size when it comes to the list of weapons here, there's also the options of the different classes being able to choose from a list of weapons that they can all use. So in other words, assault players aren't just limited to assault rifles, medics aren't just limited to LMGs, etc. The classes themselves here are balanced really beautifully too. This time, the roles are a little different. Assault now can provide ammo to fellow soldiers along with being the go-to soldier for regular anti-infantry combat. Engineers are equipped with rockets or AT mines along with the repair tool to destroy and repair vehicles. Medics are equipped with LMGs and are able to revive fallen allies along with healing them. And recons are equipped with sniper rifles and are able to dish out long-range damage, along with calling in mortar strikes from afar and tossing out ever so helpful motion sensors. Or blow stuff up with C4, which can be incredibly satisfying. Teamwork and coordination between the classes is essential here. Assaults for resupplying the team, engineers for destroying enemy vehicles along with fixing up ally ones, medics for healing and reviving allies, which is especially helpful here since revives refund tickets in Conquest and attacker reinforcements in Rush, and recons for long-range support. One thing that all of the classes can do is manually spot enemies. Something that is now a staple of modern-day Battlefield games. You're able to press a button if you have an enemy in your sights to spot them. This shows the enemy's position on the map in real time for a short duration. It can be enemy infantry, a vehicle, or even a piece of enemy equipment. If it belongs to the enemy, you can spot it for the team. Players can also use the same input for spotting to call for health or ammo, let a teammate in a vehicle know that you'd like a ride, point out an objective to attack or defend, etc. Expanded vehicle combat means that Battlefield lives up to its name here with multiple tanks, IFVs, helicopters, etc. out on the field contributing to the war effort. The vehicles themselves are balanced greatly here too. They can do some serious damage, especially when people are communicating with one another. However, meaningful counterplay from vehicles or the engineer class keeps these vehicles in check. Tanks are able to destroy infantry fighting vehicles and infantry, but their low mobility and slow reload times makes them vulnerable to players that are too aggressive in using them. IFVs are able to deal with infantry and light armor effectively, but still have to be careful to not be too aggressive. Attack helicopter pilots are able to rain down death from above and can stay in the air for quite a long time if they keep moving. Transport helicopter pilots are able to get troops to and from different places along with providing anti-infantry capabilities and much more. In Bad Company 2, there are 4 different game modes: Conquest, Rush, Squad Rush, and Squad Deathmatch. Conquest tasks both teams with controlling points on the map and draining reinforcements from the enemy. Each team has a reinforcement count that goes down as allies and enemies fight each other and over the control points on the map. Whoever drains the enemy tickets down to 0 wins. Rush is an attacker versus defender game mode. Attackers are tasked with destroying all the MCOM stations along the path in pairs, and the defenders are tasked with draining the attackers' reinforcements down to 0. Squad Rush is similar to the standard rush mode, except for a few key differences here. For one, rather than it being a 12v12 mode, it's now an 8v8 mode with 2 squads per team. Instead of 2 MCOM stations per sector of the map, it's just 1, and any vehicles that are on the map here are gone. Squad Deathmatch has a total of 16 players divided into 4 squads of 4. Whichever squad reaches 50 kills total first wins. That being said though, as referenced earlier, I could only play 2 out of these 4 game modes consistently, those being Conquest and Rush. Alright, now that we looked at the good of Bad Company 2's multiplayer in greater detail, we gotta get some of the bad out of the way. Thankfully, there aren't very many things the game does wrong here, but I do feel like these still need to be said. Firstly, for Rush Mode, the balance between vehicle spawns can heavily favor one side or another in a match. There were a few instances where the attackers were able to get vehicles like tanks or IFVs, meanwhile the defenders got nothing. One instance was on Port Valdez, where the attackers had access to tanks, a UAV, and mobile anti-air. When we retreated to Sector 2, we got a Bradley, but they got to keep their T-90 and mobile AA. When we got pushed to the 3rd sector, this was when the balance was even, us defenders now having access to not just our IFV, but an attack helicopter now too. However, the worst instance of this during my time playing by far was on Laguna Presa, where the attackers consistently had access to Bradleys for every sector after they destroyed both MCOMs in the 1st sector via a beach assault. They also get a UAV for all but the 2nd pair of MCOMs. Myself and the rest of the defenders, on the other hand, no vehicles to speak of for the entire match. What makes this even worse is that if the attackers are really well coordinated on this map, there can be multiple Bradleys operating at a given time, with 1 additional IFV per sector captured, with the defenders having no vehicles of their own to counter them. Guess what happened? We got a pretty swift and crushing defeat. I can accept the enemy having vehicles and my team not having any so long as there's some sort of meaningful trade-off. However, this game's trade-off for more often than not are stationary rockets in favor of no vehicles. It's one thing to be up against a well-coordinated team while your team is disorganized. That crushing defeat is warranted. However, when both teams are coordinated but one has all the vehicles while the other doesn't have any, that's when we get to balancing issue territory. The only times that the side that doesn't have any vehicles would do well in is if they were sweating and try-harding. Which, it's an 11-year-old game. 99% of people on here are here to play casually and for the memories. This means that certain sectors or maps will result in the attackers wiping the floor with the defenders or vice versa depending on who has the vehicles and who doesn't. It's not as big of an issue when it comes to this issue showing up for one sector or maybe 2, but it's downright egregious when this kind of vehicle imbalance occurs for the entire round. Another bad thing I noticed for this game was that the connection quality would sometimes drop for brief periods pretty hard. Though I'm hesitant to blame the game on this one, as this could just very well be my internet connection having a dip or two here. Regardless though, I thought I'd bring it up. A third thing that I found a little weird was the distance in which the spotting mechanic worked. Later Battlefield games would enable players to spot enemies or tag objectives or whatever else at greater distances, so this is a fixed issue nowadays, but back in Bad Company 2, it feels like the enemy has to be within your engagement distance to be able to spot them. Multiple times I tried to spot an enemy only for it to refuse because they were too far from me, which more often than not, spending so much time trying to spot an enemy got me wounded or killed. It also doesn't help that the zone in which you can spot an enemy is really limited here in this game. You basically have to already be aiming at something to tag it. Don't get me wrong, you shouldn't be able to spot something by simply vaguely looking in its general direction, but later Battlefield titles would let you have a slightly larger cone of spotting along with the greater distance, which combined together went a long way in making the spotting fluent. But here, it's more restrictive. Plus, it also doesn't help that the input for spotting, at least for consoles anyway, is in a weird spot with it being the back button, or select button if you're on PlayStation. I'm not sure if whatever input spotting is on a keyboard would be considered weird or not, so I can't really say anything on there. Okay, I know that may have been a little painful. I'm sorry if the rose-tinted glasses were violently ripped off your face with that segment, but it's done and over with. However, we're not done with the review yet. We've got a few additional things to talk about, mainly Onslaught Mode and possibly one of the greatest DLCs to grace any FPS video game ever, Bad Company 2 Vietnam. Unfortunately, I couldn't find games for either of these, only finding servers that were as barren and empty as my reasons to keep playing Call of Duty, so I can only go off recollection and watching gameplay on YouTube. Onslaught Mode is a 4-player co-op mode that challenges you and your squad with clearing a map that's filled with AI enemies in the quickest time possible. There's only 4 maps here, but each one tests a squad's ability in different areas. To give 2 examples, Atacama Desert tests the squad's ability with vehicles, while Nelson Bay tests the squad on anti-infantry combat. There's not much else to the mode other than the fact that you get to play against bots, it was only released for consoles, and it can still be a lot of hectic fun, especially on the harder difficulties where the player and their squad truly gets tested on cooperation with one another and using their abilities and skills to win the day. Bad Company 2 Vietnam is simply one of the greatest DLCs for any FPS game, possibly any video game ever. While very little in terms of the gameplay has been changed here, as in it's just Bad Company 2 with a Vietnam War paint job, the art direction is what truly sells it for me, along with the fact that it is literally just Bad Company 2, but set in Vietnam. The Vietnam War era weapons, outfits, structures, vehicles, hell, even the loading screen has that feel to it. It's because the core gameplay was compatible in its entirety here with this art style that this DLC does so well. I think this DLC needs more praise for the fact that it worked so well. Yeah, we got an amazing product, but the reasoning behind it is rare nowadays. Taking the core gameplay of one era and putting it in another while making hardly any adjustments to said core gameplay is rarely seen nowadays because it's nearly impossible. Bad Company 2 Vietnam is one of the few cases that shows it can be done. Overall, while Bad Company 2's single-player offering leans closer to the average side, Bad Company 2's multiplayer is damn near incredible. No, actually, correction, it is incredible. Although it has aged a little in comparison to modern-day Battlefield games, it's a vast improvement over the first Bad Company in many aspects. It's basically the video game equivalent of Terminator 2 overshadowing Terminator 1. Reliving this game was an absolute joy, despite some of the rage-inducing things that were mentioned from both the campaign and multiplayer. Playing this game did briefly transport me back to when it was alive and kicking, when I'd hop on with friends and we would just play the game while talking about whatever. It's a shame that this game is as dead as it is, but I can understand why given how old this game is by now. However, having revisited this game makes me want a Bad Company 3 or Battlefield Bad Company 2 remaster once more, but I know either of those are fairly unlikely. I shall remain hopeful, however. In the meantime though, I am very much looking forward to Battlefield 2042. And with that being said, that'll do it for this review, everyone. What do you think of Battlefield Bad Company 2? Do you agree or disagree on the campaign? Do you like the multiplayer as much as I do? Do you also wish for a Bad Company 2 remaster or a Bad Company 3? Let's get a little discussion going on in the comments about this game. With that being said, thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, make sure to leave a like, drop a comment, and if you really want to, you can hit that subscribe button and be sure to click that bell icon to receive all notifications for future uploads. And until next time, stay safe, stay healthy, and peace out, everyone.